Chapter 12 deals heavily with union issues, also deals with employee management projects issues too. And these are what we're learning in this chapter here about the history of organized labor, their objectives. Labor unions have been responsible in many ways for what you can see there with minimum wage laws, overtime, severance, child labor. It used to be 100 years ago, more than that actually now, that 10-year-olds would be working in factories. Also, safety. Public sector unions, those are like such as me, a teacher, firefighters, etc. One thing that is going on right now is that with the economy in this country, when you look at the salaries of these government employees, very often their benefits such as health insurance, vacations, retirement, and all this add substantially. For example, when it's police and fire, they usually base their pension on the highest 3 years of earnings, which is why a lot of these officers will go out and do tons of overtime, and they can end up, instead of making 80,000 this year, earn 180,000, which vastly increases their pension payment. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it is something that needs to be negotiated because we are all taxpayers and we're paying for them. And I'm a teacher at your college. I am costing you people money too. I do get some benefits as an adjunct though. I have to pay for my health insurance there. I will get a pension eventually. I've been there over 20 years now, so it is something I could get. I will be talking a little bit about this type of stuff later on my personal basis here. And goals, and I think anybody would want that, whether you're the owner or the lowest person on the totem pole. And then this is the history of organized labor, craft unions. And what they were like tradesmen, but they had long work weeks, okay? And this here, I'm sure some of you might have heard about the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. This was a little over 100 years ago. A lot of people were killed, and this was a major impetus for unionization. And there's other organizations here. Unions are not perfect. There have been a few issues with them that have been in the news. We had the AFL, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. Craft unions formed about over 130 years ago. And you had the CIO, Congress of Industrial Organizations, CIO, and those were unskilled. And then they've been together today with about 12.5 million members. You got to remember, we have 300 million people in the country. Not all of us work. They do have some power. And almost half of all the union members work for government. I talked about what it costs the taxpayers. These agreements do need to be addressed because it's causing bankruptcy in some areas. Public opinion. A lot of people are anti this type of thing here because in some cases, it used to be, I would say, that private sector jobs pay better than public sector. But what's going on now with the public sector with really good benefits, etc., it's almost worth it to take a drop in salary because you're going to be guaranteed a lot of things, but you don't know. And it talks about certain things here like the yellow dog contract. Which helped unions. It prohibited the use of these that require employees to agree not to join a union. You have collective bargaining right now. There's a lot of stuff going on in the state of Connecticut with the unions and everything here. The state is in very poor financial shape, and they're trying to get givebacks from the employees. I am not an expert on labor. I will not comment on that. I might say they're doing great, they're doing poorly, but you're trying to get a thing where both groups are satisfied. The rank and file, as well as the management. a union can be decertified. It has happened, okay? And they need to be certified, and they do have laws that if you're starting a union at your place where you're working, such as XYZ Burgers, and you want to unionize, technically the owner cannot take coercive action against you, such as firing you, unless there really is a just cause. They could end up in more trouble. What I have seen in some organizations, they tend to treat their people a little bit better, especially if it's grocery store one against grocery store two. They're going to offer these people good benefits and better working conditions than the one union because they're trying to keep it that way. They don't want the unions, but they can't go around saying you can't do it. This is why people will join where a union will get in place or why you want to join one. Doesn't always make it easier, and yes, you can be fired if you are in a union. A lot of people think they're immune. I have managed union people in a couple of jobs, and they will have the union steward there, and sometimes the union steward will say to that person, you're stepping out of line. You do not have the rights to come in late every day. We had a union contract that said you could be late up to, let's say, 4 times a month. The person would be punching in every day 10, 20 minutes late. I would write them up. She would file a grievance. He would file a grievance. And then they would be said, it's a just cause to have you disciplined or to suspend you for 3 days. You might like the person if you're the boss, but that is another story. And you've got different types of agreements in there. Sometimes you have to join the union or pay dues. Where I am at my college, I'm an adjunct. I have to pay union dues whether or not I join the union. Can I file grievances? I could if I wanted to, but I'll be honest, I have been treated extremely well at the college. There have been a couple of times where I could have had an issue, but I was able to talk it over with somebody in personnel where we straightened it out, and it was nothing really horrendous going on. You have closed shop, union shop, agency shop. Sometimes you have to join, but you have to pay the fees, or vice versa. You don't have to join the union, you don't have to pay the fee. You might want to know about this if you're going into a job where it is union. Right to work laws. You have the open shop here. I was in one place where it was open shop, but I had a minor issue with the supervisor. And then I don't think it's right when you're going in there and you're starting to join the union beforehand. And when I saw some stuff there, I decided it was worthwhile joining the union. The dues really are not that expensive, maybe $10, $17 a month. It depends on the union you belong to, and I do call it the cost of doing business or succeeding. Right to work states. Connecticut is not one of them. Disagreements. Yes, you can have a boss who's totally unfair, and believe it or not, it does happen. You can file a grievance. The manager has to know how to manage people. I cannot single out person D, this young man, when there's 3 other women there because I don't like men. I might prefer women, whatever, or vice versa. They do have a strong grievance. Other thing, too, if you are management, you have to keep notes on everybody. You just can't have a folder on that one poor guy and the other 3 females, whatever. I'm not being gender specific on that, and not write anything up on them because you could be called not enough documentation on your staff. I forget the technical word. This was more than a couple of years ago when I was managing people. You have mediation arbitration. This is when you're bargaining between the union and management. Management wants to spend as little as possible. If you're representing the union, you want them to get as much as possible. And you need to have an understanding of both parties. They do say that the CEO, the highest paid person in an organization, should not be making more than 20 times as much as one person. And I could see where you get the attitude when somebody's making $6 million a year and you're there working there for, let's say, 14,000 a year. That is a huge discrepancy. A lot of executives get bonuses even when the company is a disaster. It talks about the grievance resolution process, all the little steps there, and people have to know what the procedures are. And these are tactics used in conflicts. You do go on strike. You could boycott, work slowdown, pickets here, and I know sometimes when a place like an essential business, they cannot strike if you're a cop or a fireman. And I've seen in some cases where the contract negotiations go on for 3 years, then it's retroactive. So if you're getting, let's say, a raise of $2,000 a year 3 years later, I'm being hypothetical with that, they're going to have to pay you back the $6,000 for the past 3 years because there was no agreement. And strikes can be effective. You can do boycotts too, where people stop buying this stuff. For example, I work at XYZ store. We're on strike. We tell people don't buy anything there. That hits their bottom line. And yes, they can hire what we call scabs, people to cross the picket line and work there. And this is what I'm getting at. You can get an injunction saying they can't go on strike. Really bad for morale. You get strike breakers again, those scabs. I don't like that word. But they're getting people in there. Let's say a school goes on strike. The kids have to be educated. They're going to bring in people left and right so the kids get their education. My personal thing is if you're a professional, you need to act professional. If I'm a teacher, I'm not happy with my salary. I should be negotiating in good confidence with my management, but not penalizing the students. And just talking about a thing here. I'm not saying this is an ethical, it could be called an ethical dilemma, where they need people to go to the store. And you might be supporting the strike, but the other thing too is you can legally go across the line, and these people that are striking cannot throw rocks or bullets at you. And would you do this? What would you do? What are the consequences? It could be a really tough thing here, especially when you're in a town where you have a major employer and some of your friends and family are crossing the picket line because they need the money because they are unemployed or they need extra funds to pay for a new garage door. Labor unions, the number of unions are falling, okay? They want givebacks from labor. They want to help save jobs. There is a law now, too, that if you're going to lay off more than X amount of people, you have to notify the government or the people, I think, at least 60 days in advance. For example, General Electric left its corporate headquarters in Fairfield in 2016. They were notified properly, and by law, they don't have to give you any severance, but some companies, if they're moving out or whatever and they're going across the country, they may say, we'll give you 1 week's of pay for every year you were here. So that means if you were there 25 years, you get 6 months' salary. It sounds like a lot of money, but that 6 months can go fast if you don't have a job. And you can't collect unemployment because you had severance. Labor unions in the future. They're going to be dealing with more white collar here. They're going to be working with other things here. They want job security, of course. Profit sharing, I think that is a great idea because if you are a productive employee, you're going to make more money. You have a good job. And it's all about union membership by state. Little chart here goes into where it's low union. You can see how the South is not heavily unionized. You will find more unions, let's say, in, I would say, like New York, California, Washington. Interesting chart. And this is what I was talking about with the CEO compensation, where the CEO can get a fortune even if he is I hate to say it, doofus. Or she is a doofus. College athletes, they bring in a lot of money. The games, donations, etc. And the players wanted to start a salary here. They wanted to unionize the university, appeal in the union. I don't know the outcome of this. And it's talking about, when you talk about unions, you do have professional players. They make a lot of money. Are they worth it? I don't know. It's up for you to decide. If you want to pay $100 for a ticket to see somebody playing the game, but if you're a fan, it's worth it. It's like going to a rock concert. You might pay $150, $250 to see some performer because you like them. Talking about executive compensation, giving shareholders more say in compensation decisions. I would love to see it where the shareholders could fire the CEO. I don't know if that would happen. That is a personal opinion. There are some executives that are not earning their keep at all. Pay equity. Women earn 3/4 of what men earn. There is a disparity. I can't say it doesn't happen. But it's saying young women are earning more than men because they have a higher graduation ratio than the gentlemen. And equal pay for equal work. I agree with this 1,000%. When you're in a government operation, it is much more fair. More equitable is the word. And it's talking about salary gender gap. You do make more money as you mature, but there is age discrimination too. You know, once you're, I hate to say it, over 40, they don't want you. They want young people, okay? And you are seeing the gap there between women and men. It happens. It talks about sexual harassment, and it's been in the news a lot the past couple of years. These violations can be expensive for the business. They offer sensitivity training to everybody, and yes, a woman can harass a man, a woman can harass a woman, a man can harass a man. Basically, it's male trying to, what's the word, misbehave with a female. And they think it's okay, they're making a joke. You have to think. And it talks about the types of harassment. That one there, that is very, what's the word, obvious. And then you can have the hostile where they just do intimidating or they make your life a little miserable. Other things going on. There's a lot of women in the workforce, and there's also a lot of daddies too. And I have known a few fathers, single fathers raising a family, and there's a dividing issue here. And you need the money to raise a family, but it puts a stress on the person working as well as on the child, and it affects the company's bottom line. And childcare, they could do different types of benefits here. The on-site childcare centers, that would work with the huge company. If you have a 4-person insurance office, that's not going to really work. Needs to be thought out more carefully because kids really are our future. We also have aging parents. I have an elderly mom. I've had a couple of times where my mom was at the emergency room. I was at the hospital once for 27 hours. She's fine, but I missed a day of school. I had to call up to school and say, I'm not going to be in. My mom's in the hospital. It's things here, again, where you want the productive employee, but you need to get the job. I mean, take care of the family members. And then you can get some people where they have aging parents and they have kids. So that's what we call the sandwich generation. Talks about taking care of a parent as well as a kid. Drug use, big problem, okay? I have been at work where we've had somebody show up drunk after lunch. A lot of companies will drug test workers. They do it randomly, and there's no way around it. You could have grounds for being terminated. I see this in the news periodically. Violence. It's in the news. I really don't want to comment about it. But the other thing, too, is companies have to know how to recognize and treat people in the company so that way they do not become that disgruntled. And you need to understand that, okay? When they make some erroneous, I should say, erratic behavior, you kind of have to notice that if you're a manager. And if you're a coworker, letting your boss know.